Gave up a TV job to start a podcast in your basement. If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does.
It was Championship Sunday here in Indianapolis. What's the mindset then coming in as a defending champion?
I want to win. No, I want to win.
The young lady over my shoulder, Caitlin Clark.
Not the best looking guy. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, Matt Randazzo was really good looking.
What has this last month, 2 months, 3 months been like for you? It's an important fan base for the Fighting Illini, is it not?
It is.
He turned 69 years young last week. He looked good, Coach.
Oh, try it. Thank you.
Welcome to Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. It is Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. Wednesday, February 4th. Bobby, is it the 4th? You're not on the air, so don't worry about it. The 5th. February 5th here on a Wednesday in the Quad Cities. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. Another big show for you. If you're watching live on YouTube, we appreciate it. Please subscribe if you haven't done that. And also tell some friends about what we're starting here in the Quad Cities. It's a daily streaming Quad City sports show. Also, if you missed the show on YouTube, obviously it lives and remains on YouTube, but you can watch it or listen to it on the podcast platform as well. That sometimes is much better because you don't have to look at me or my ugly guests. You can just listen to what we are talking about. So we're available on all the podcasting platforms, especially Apple Podcasts, which has been a big one for us. Recently got put up on there. So please follow, subscribe, all the things you have to do on the podcasting platforms as well as we continue to talk sports daily here in the Quad Cities. A big show for you today, of course. It's Wednesday, which is a tradition around here. We do Wildman Wednesday. My mentor, Dan Burich, will join us a little bit later on the show to talk about a little bit of everything. Super Bowl coming up. Also, a subject that I brought up with him was the Mount Rushmore of Western Big Six basketball coaches. Of course, recently, Sean Taylor became the winningest Western Big Six basketball coach in history. So we kind of looked back at who would that Mount Rushmore be, or who would be on that Mount Rushmore when it comes to coaches. Plus, Dan Burich has an opinion about everything. That's why we love him. He'll be along in just a little bit. Also, Bobby Metcalf, former sports writer here in the Quad Cities, a good buddy of mine, will join me live in studio in just a little bit to talk about all of the hot topics in the world of sports and a whole bunch more, some high school talk in there as well. And also last night, a tough night for the Iowa Hawkeyes. They fell once again. It was their 5th loss in 6 games. They lose to Purdue 90-81. Coming up in the second half hour of the first hour, if that makes any sense, probably around 10:30, 10:45, we'll be joined by Baer, former Hawkeye, former Bettendorf standout, to break down the Iowa Hawkeyes' 9-point loss last night to the Boilermakers. If you missed yesterday's show, Logan Lee, former Orion standout and Iowa Hawkeye, just getting done with his rookie season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Logan joined us last night, or I should say yesterday. Also, Tom Kaker was along. And Jim Madsen, for you Illini fans that want to get caught up on all your Illini athletics, Jim Madsen is the person to talk to. We talked to the men's basketball team. More importantly, the women's basketball team. Shauna Green doing a fantastic job. She's got the Illini 7-4 in Big Ten play. They just knocked off Maryland. They'd never knocked off Maryland ever. So good things going for the Illini ladies. Check out yesterday's show as well. But we start today's show. I got to get my microphones correct and make sure I do this better. But we start this show, bring on that microphone over, with an old friend of mine, Bobby. Thanks for making the trip all the way out to rural Milan, Illinois. Everybody complains about it. It wasn't that bad, was it?
7 years. It took you 7 years to get me out here.
You know what?
And I see why. It took me about 7 years to get out here.
It's not that bad. So you're over in you're an Iowa side guy, right?
Yeah, I'm a Davenport
guy.
So
it was like 25 minutes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
25, 30.
It's when I used to work at the station, it's about 17 minutes. I got the space heater going. It's cold up here, so I wanted to turn that down a little bit. But it's not that bad. You get places pretty quick, and it's nice out here, nice and quiet.
It's worth the drive.
Perfect place to just stash away in your loft and talk sports for the entire morning.
You're perfect. You're like, what, 10 minutes from Highland Springs?
That's
great golf course.
That's the key. Is I love Highland Springs. It's a great place to be. So, and I don't mean this in a weird way, but you look great.
Thanks, man.
First off, you're the first guy to wear a tie on the show.
I felt like I had to class it up a little bit coming in here. But.
Which isn't hard to do because we've set a pretty low bar. When the likes of like John Marks and Tom Kakert and Pat Anger have sat in that chair, like the level of classness is already pretty low. So you've done a good job with that. Plus you look good. So Bobby and I worked together at WQAD for only a short period, like maybe 10 months.
Yeah.
You're a producer at WQAD right now. And I left and then you just started losing weight, getting into shape, and I guess it was me.
It was. Not just dealing with the stress of you every day, man. It just takes all the years and the weight off. It's like incredible.
Well, it's like we were in a relationship, and when we broke up, and every time you break up, you get back into shape. So that's not what it was. But.
I got to get looking good for the next best friend of my life.
Yeah. Wow. I'm out. I don't like that. I started the show talking about Iowa basketball, and I want to kind of get into that. Nicholas Baer is going to be here in just a little bit, so we'll break down the game a little bit more with him. But big picture Iowa basketball right now, and you've been in this area for a long time, grew up in this area, know a lot about the program and all of that. You were around during the Alford ages and the Licklider and all that kind of stuff. Where I don't want to say where are you at with Fran McCaffrey in this era, but as someone who knows about the program, what do you think of Iowa basketball right now? Big picture.
They gotta do something. They gotta move on from Fran. I mean, at this point, I'm not involved. I'm not in that locker room, and I'm not around that team day to day. So I feel a little weird.
Yeah.
Calling for anybody's head or job, but I just think that what Fran has done in his career at Iowa is a lot to be said for that. I mean, we remember where it was when he took over. You didn't think about Iowa basketball. I mean, what he's done, he got them back to being relevant. He's National Player of the Years, NCAA tournament appearances, not as deep a runs as anybody would have liked to have, and I think not as deep as runs as they probably should have had with some of those teams. And even this year, this year's been disappointing. You got Owen now out for the year, which is going to hurt. They're still, been a solid team, but I think this is kind of the writing's on the wall. It just feels like, and this has got to. They've got to make a change. It just feels like. I
always use the word apathy and energy and excitement, and there's not a ton of it with the program right now, which I think is unfortunate because one, Fran didn't change overnight. So, I still think Fran is Fran, and that means for the good and the bad. There's a lot of good about Fran McCaffrey. There's things that you're going to be frustrated by, and that has frustrated people. But you look at this day and age of college sports, I think, and it's at the University of Iowa. Lisa just moved on, but you had coaches that had been there forever. And I think that's weird, not weird, but it's different in college sports right now because people don't stay as long as Iowa coaches have stayed. Brad Underwood has been at Illinois for a long, long time, and he's been there a minute compared to what Fran's been at Iowa, if that makes any sense. Yeah. It seems like Brad's there and established. It's just a volatile profession. It just seems, and it maybe is a credit to the University of Iowa and the athletic department and their loyalty, but there's some long tenured head coaches. I'm grouping Lisa into that, and Lisa walked away on her own accord, but it's not something you do at the University of Iowa very often is fire a coach or get rid of a coach.
And I love that about the University of Iowa. Kirk's been there forever. You went from oh my God, I'm going to get roasted for this. My brain's just freezing.
Hayden Fry?
Thank you. I know that. I'm like my brain's freezing.
No, it happens.
You go from Hayden Fry to Kirk.
Because it's freezing up here.
Yeah, you go to Hayden to Kirk, and that's it. Lisa's been there for years, and they go from Lisa to Jan, who'd been on staff for forever. Yep. Fran's been there. Rick Heller at the baseball program. They don't move on, and I think that's a credit to Iowa and the culture of just Iowa as a whole. And you kind of look at it's the Pittsburgh Steelers model. They've had 3 coaches in 50 years.
Yeah.
And then I know the Hawkeyes, and especially on the football program, they've kind of modeled themselves after the same program. But I think that's an attractive thing. But at some point, and we saw it with the football program a couple of years, or last year with Brian, sometimes changes need to be made. And I just think at this point, Fran is what he is, and they've reached a ceiling with him. I don't think they're going to be able to get past another ceiling with him.
And I don't know, and not that it's not a bad thing, but this wasn't meant to be a Fran topic, but I think obviously when you're leading the program, but that's the issue. Obviously the injuries are going to hurt this year.
Yeah.
And you look at it, and 2-3 weeks ago, they're beating Indiana. They're 3-2 in conference, and they're going out to California with an opportunity. and it's been 5 or 6 losses since then. That's college basketball. It's weird how quickly things can go one way or another. And then the injury to Owen is unfortunate. I will say this, and it kind of frustrates me because there's a lot of people out there that just assume certain things. We talked with Tom Kakert yesterday about, rumors of Owen maybe leaving and Brocky in a portal here and all this kind of stuff. Both of those young men are still at the University of Iowa, and they plan on being at the University of Iowa for all I've heard and know. Now, here's the caveat to that. If Fran McCaffrey leaves or is asked to leave, or if there's a coaching change at the end of the season, all bets are off.
Yeah.
All bets are off. That's an entirely different situation, different subject. But I think there's a lot of rumors and putting cart ahead of horse and all that kind of stuff that's just really frustrating because these are young people that are trying to play basketball and focus on everything that's going on. And there's a lot of noise. Not that they hear the noise. I don't think they know or care about what goes on. But I just would just say just pump the brakes on everything because you can't get too far down the road with things because as far as I know, and I know both young men very well and know both families pretty well, they're both happy with staff, with the University of Iowa. They both love being there, all of those kind of things. So I have heard nothing to think anything differently. Again, if something happens at the end of the year with this coaching staff. And that's the thing too, Bobby, and I'll ask you about that. If you're going to play at a university, yes, it helps if it's location or you like the university and all that kind of stuff. The number one reason the majority of basketball players go to a university is for the coaches and the coaching staff, wouldn't you say?
I would agree with that. I mean,
except maybe money now.
Well, that's the other thing. And that's the thing.
Then.
I would not now financially. Would I love to be a college athlete or a college coach in today's world? Absolutely. Would I mentally want to do it? No, because I think there's so many more stressors than there were 5 years ago. I mean, when you're a coach and you don't know you can't guarantee what your roster is going to be from year to year. I mean, it used to be okay. You recruit a guy. Chances are 9 times out of 10 he's there for 4 years, maybe 5. Maybe he transfers, but now it's like you recruit a guy, you've got him. Oh, maybe you don't have him now. Now someone's come with a better offer, and okay, you've got a guy. Oh, is he going to be here for 4 years? Is he going to be here for 1 year? How do you plan your roster from year to year?
Yeah.
And if you're a player, you may go in with all the best of intentions of I'm going to be loyal to this coach or this program. If Kansas comes along, or if Kentucky comes along, or if Duke comes along and says, "Hey, here's why don't you come play for us?" It's really tough to say no.
I bang this drum all the time, but for a lot of these young men, young ladies, the most lucrative they're going to be, I don't know if lucrative is the right word, the most money they're going to make, I'm going to just dumb it up for myself so I don't try to tell myself too dumb and say something that makes sense. The most money they're going to make, maybe in their lifetime, is going to be between the ages of 18 and 22.
This is their best chance to make the most money they can make. I mean, obviously, if you go pro.
Unless they go into TV. And then they'll be...
Oh, yeah, trust me. There's a reason I look this great.
Yeah, he wakes up looking like that.
But yeah, I mean, unless you're going to go pro, which, as we know, it's very, very, very hard to do. You can be, an amazing player and still not, and for some reason or another, not get drafted.
Yeah.
This is your best chance to make your money. Yeah. So if a team's coming to me with a, 6-figure deal or 7-figure deal, in some cases, why would I say no?
Yeah.
Like, loyalty is great. It doesn't pay the bills.
The problem with and you mentioned being a coach in today's day and age, and Fran's a developer of talent. Yeah. And you can't do, you have to re-recruit your guys every year. It's amazing what Brad Underwood's done because he's gone to he went with building program and those kind of things to the transfers were the way to go. And then last year was almost opposite where they lost more people than they gained. Yeah. Coleman Hawkins leaves, a lot of people leave, and they've now gone European. There's that Will Riley might be a first round pick. It's wild because you look at, and we had Jim Atson on 2 days ago, and I thought Will Riley for that team is somebody they could build around it, maybe somebody who's a superstar next year too. And Jim was like, no, he's like, they took on Isevich and KJ and Will Riley, basically expecting them to probably be there for 1 year. That's hard.
Yeah.
That's hard when you're coaching basketball and with chemistry and with, familiarity to speed date through a season and hope that the best results were at the end of the year. And Iowa's done a good job, I think, basketball-wise and football-wise, of using the portal to supplement, but they still want to build and build and build, and they haven't been able to do that to a high level yet on basketball side.
They don't feel like they're, but on the flip side, they don't feel like they're losing as much to the portal as a lot of other places are. I mean, in football, you look at Goodson. They lost Goodson. That was and they lose a couple of skill guys, but defensive players almost always stay there.
I think somebody said that they only lost like 9 guys this year, 8 or 9 guys this year, which seems like a lot. Like back in our day, we'd be like, man, 9 guys from but it's nothing. No. They're like one of the lowest that have gone there, and the guys that have gone in there aren't like headline guys.
And I think that again goes to the longevity, the consistency in the coaching staffs. That's the thing that you're more likely to stay with a program if the coaching staff has been there and has been loyal to the coaching staff, has been loyal to you as a player, than if it's like, oh, okay, you just came in last year, why should I stick around?
Yeah. No, it makes sense. We're not going to break down the game itself last night. Although, man, if you told me last night that Iowa got 50 points combined from Josh Dix and Peyton Stanford, I would have said, okay, like that's how. I guess we'll go into a little bit of it. That's how they're gonna have to win these days, is like outscoring people, which is what they've already done. But like those 2 guys have to have high volume and high. One of those guys can't take the night off or have a bad night.
I mean, I'd also say that the way to win is play defense, but we know that ain't happening.
Not happening anytime soon.
Yeah, I mean, especially with Owen being out, you've got to look to those 2 guys to lead the team, and they're in the tough. We talked, a couple weeks ago that there was all those games that they had to win. They didn't win any. Didn't win any of them. The Minnesota game, like the one, the Penn State game by 1 point. And
and it didn't feel like it when they got done.
So it's just like there was a stretch that they needed to win and they didn't do it, and now they're back into a really tough part of their schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it gets really, really difficult. Again, Nicholas Baer, former Hawkeye, really good to join me after basketball games and kind of break down what happened. He's coming up in just a little bit, so we'll kind of dissect that a little bit more there. I thought it was a good crowd at Carver Hawkeye Arena last night. It wasn't a huge crowd, and I was talking to Tom yesterday. I think that's with what you see on Sunday, the contrast is there. Yeah. It's apparent that, like, while it's a good crowd and an energetic crowd, and I thought they did a good job, Carver gets a bad rap. When that place is full and that place is rocking, it's a great environment for college basketball, and we saw it on Sunday with the women. One, it contrasts what's going on maybe with the men's program a little bit, but 2, hats off, 32 straight sellouts for the women at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Hats off to that program, those ladies, for what they're doing.
But remember, with Caitlin not there, they were going to... No one's going to come out again. No, yeah. Awesome atmosphere. And then you have the upset on top of it. I mean, you couldn't have planned.
They weren't going to lose that game.
No,
were they?
absolutely not.
Like, you had that feeling from the jump that, like, they're not. This is one of those moments where you're like, it's the Caitlin Clark game, even when Caitlin wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean, just what a great day to be a Hawkeye fan or be in the state of Iowa again and celebrate women's basketball again. You kind of. I think women's basketball is still getting a lot of attention, but obviously when you have the biggest needle mover, and who was it said the other day? She is the needle. Yeah. When she's not playing right now, it's just the longest we haven't seen Caitlin Clark on the court for a year and a half. It seems like, kind of the tension's gone away a little bit. So I mean, it was good to have that back and remind you, just how good the women's game is and how important Caitlin is to the state of Iowa. And then to pull off the upset was great.
I think people. Big picture for Iowa women's basketball need to temper expectations, not just for this season. I think the expectations for this season were just too high, but like just in general, like it can be really good and it can be really good again. I think these recruits that they had coming over, we talked to Journey Houston on Monday, so go check out that interview. Journey's going to Iowa next year. Addie Deal's coming in, a 5-star kid. They did really well with some other 5-star kids in the future. Nobody committed or anything, but like, I don't know about you, Bobby, but if I go there to watch that game and I'm a potential commit, like that's tough to say no to.
Well, and that's the thing that I think you're going to see Caitlin's legacy last. And if you've been a recruit in the last couple of years and you go to a game at Carver and you see that sellout and you see that atmosphere, man, I'd want to play there. You go to there's a lot of other programs, great pro. Obviously, if UConn comes calling or if Dawn comes calling at South Carolina or Kim Mulkey at LSU, you're going to want to go there. But you go to that atmosphere, you see how loved women's basketball is here, and it's like, man, and that obviously Caitlin drove the needle, but then for them to do it, continue doing it without Caitlin, I would honestly love to play that. I would love to much go play there, and you go look around a lot of other women's basketball games, and they're still not packing those gyms yet, and just like I really think you might see her legacy not be okay. She didn't win a national title, but she may have driven Iowa into that kind of next sort of level. They were always a really good basketball team under Lisa, and always a relevant basketball team, but they might. It's really hard to get into that upper echelon. I don't think they're in that upper echelon, but like, man, maybe they maybe have been able to elevate themselves just a little bit, slightly more.
So that upper echelon, and it's funny because I think my comparison or my analogy when it comes to women's basketball, maybe what Caitlin did was, it seems like, yes, that upper echelon is still the UConns, the South Carolinas, LSUs, and then maybe Tennessee's in there. I don't know if they're still there anymore, but like there was that second tier, and I think more teams have joined that second tier. Yeah. Like that second tier is expanded, but it's still there. And then there's some knocking on the door, like you mentioned. Iowa could be knocking on the door. I think Tennessee could get back on track. They've had some down years, but I think they could if that ever got back on track. But people just have to remember what they just witnessed for 3 years, 4 years, whatever you want to put with Caitlin Clark. Isn't probably going to happen again. And I'm not saying Iowa's never going to win a national championship, because no, they didn't win a national championship, but like that young lady and that era, and it's all of them too. I mean, you saw Kate Martin show up, and you saw Gabby, and they're like the Beatles. It's like they're rock stars when they show up to Carver Hawkeye.
I was at the gym the other day, and I overheard a woman talking about how much she was watching Kate in the Unrivaled League, and just like watching 3-on-3 basketball because Kate Martin's in it. I mean, she's a driver too. And people,
I'm hoping to get Kate on this show. Caitlin hasn't returned my phone calls. Weird, right?
After all you did for her.
Yeah, right. But I'm hoping Kate, obviously a little more local. Mom and dad just live that way a little bit. So that's the hope. And I was telling a few people that like, I'm hoping to maybe when Kate gets done and is back in the Quad Cities again, to get her on the show. And I mean, they were like, if you have her on, like I had a buddy say to me, if you have her on, I will pay her to come talk to my 6th grade girls basketball team, because she's almost as popular, if not more popular than Caitlin Clark is. And so, and obviously the local ties with mom working at Rockridge and dad at UT helps with that a little bit, but her popularity and her shine is pretty spectacular as well. So I would just caution fans that, like, I think it can get back, like, success-wise to being really good, and these 5-star talents are awesome, but I just don't want to spend the next 10 years comparing every basketball team in every era to what we just went through, because it's just not going to be fair.
What I love about that the last few years, and obviously watching it in the state of Iowa, was awesome, but I just felt like for a couple of years South Carolina ended up winning, and yes, LSU won. The powerhouse has still won national titles the last couple of years, but for the last couple of years, it just felt like the women's tournament was just better. Yeah, there were so many years I remember in the years where there was no point in watching a lot of the games. You'd have a 1-8 matchup, and it'd be a 30-point blowout, or it's like you'd have the number 1 team in the country, whether it was UConn or South Carolina, or whatever, playing the number 7 team in the country, and it was a 30-point game. And it's like, well, why would I want to watch this when your top 10 matchup isn't competitive? At least now I feel like you're getting to the point where, and there's still some blowouts, and UConn is still a cream of the crop, and South Carolina is still the cream of the crop, but like, you're watching these games, and man, the tournament was great last year. I mean, you had South Carolina almost get knocked off by Houston, Texas Tech. It was a game I remember, it was like the Elite 8 where
Iowa State nearly knocked off Stanford.
Yeah, I mean there were great basketball games last year, and it was involving a lot of the top seeds, and that's why we love the men's tournament so much, because 2-15, 5-12, those matches are great. It's moving now to the women's game, and it's awesome. I think it was awesome to see that.
I want to stay with this topic and go to, because you covered a lot of girls basketball, high school wise, in your day, and you look at, I know you were at the shootout this year as well. You look at, and I had Deanne Kramer on Friday, and we talked about women's sports in general, but especially basketball, that it's what Caitlin has done, or those ladies have done, has shined a spotlight on what was already a good product that was just maybe slept on. Yeah. Like, would you agree with that? Like, yes, I mean, and I always preference this with, like, yes, through the years in all sports, athletes probably get bigger, they get faster, all those kind of things. So I'm not saying that in any spirit. Like, yes, probably the quality throughout time has gotten a little bit better, but girls basketball in our area has been good for a long time. It's
been really
and now
good.
maybe they're getting the spotlight and the shine that they deserve a little bit.
It's been really good. We've had really good coaches come through. We've had really good players come through. And yeah, I think honestly, I think our area was kind of awakened maybe to the potential or the quality of girls basketball a little early. We had some really, obviously you had Markeisha Harris, and then, but like really, I think when you got Bree Beal and Kristlyn Carr at Rocky, and then you had Janaea Houston, Journey's older sister, and you had the Journey Houston, Jaciana Stowers, Paige Bradford trio at North. You had that game in the shootout. What was it? I don't know, 8-9 years ago now. That was when after Gary took it over. You had Rocky versus North, and on Carver Center at Augie was packed, standing room only. I think that was kind of a moment where you're like, this could be something really special for girls basketball. And that was before Caitlin Clark even broke on the scene. I think Caitlin Clark may have been a freshman in high school at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you look at, we for that few 3 years, you had Grace Buffelli and the North Scott team that won 3 state titles. When they played
4 years,
3 and 4 years.
That's slept on.
Yeah.
Too.
I mean, that's an incredible. And that senior year, I've covered tournaments. That's one of the few times in my life I walked into Wells Fargo and I was like, they're going to win a title.
Yeah.
I walked in for the quarters. I'm like, they're going to win a state title. It's not going to be even competitive. And they rolled to that state tournament.
It felt like you used to feel when you went to cover Assumption
Girls Soccer, right? They're going to win this thing.
Is it like 4-0, 5-0? But yeah, I know.
So and you had that matchup. You had the PV girls beating that Rocky team. The PV girls went 21-0 with Spellhog. I mean, like those games, those nightcap games, especially at the shootout, I think really put an attention on girls basketball in this area in a way I think maybe before the rest of the state caught on. Yeah. And then Caitlin comes in, and I remember going. I saw her play at Dowling in the state tournament. And that gym was not like full. It was a quarterfinal game, and they lost that game. But it was not that full. And now you look at it, I think if people knew what Caitlin would have been, the Wells Fargo would have been sold out.
Yeah.
So I think we were actually really fortunate because we had so much good talent come here early that we had a lot of eyes kind of drawn to girls basketball before Caitlin Clark phenomenon.
And Matt Koss, when he was on the show, kind of compared that era you just talked about with Bree and Kristlyn and the Spellogs and that era. I think that was probably when Janae Houston and Jaciana Stowers were over at North around that time too. And you can almost compare it to that now with Journey Houston and Divine Burridge at North. There's a Vice girl going to Drake, and Reagan Pagnano's really good when it comes to individual talent. The young girls over at Bettendorf, Aliana Guy and
the one down at McCorkle, yeah.
And we talk about all those. And I did all that just to set up the fact that Lauren Walker became the school's all-time leading scorer yesterday. Arguably the MAC Player of the Year that nobody gives the love to that maybe she deserves. Did you cover Lindsey Smith? Or is that before?
That was before I got there. I'm aware of Lindsey Smith. I think I covered one of her games when she was at Ambrose.
Okay.
But yeah, you talk about slept on is Lauren Walker. I mean, the girl scores 30 a night and they're winning the MAC, and it's just like, she's going to Lewis, but I mean, she's a great player. I mean, last night passing Lindsey Smith. I mean, Lindsey Smith is one of the, I don't know if she's on a Mount Rushmore of like girls basketball players, like not top 4, but if you had like an expanded Mount Rushmore, but a really good player at DeWitt, and then went to Wisconsin, ended up going to Wisconsin, had a lot of injury issues, ACL issues, and so kind of derailed her career. But I mean, for the longest time, she was one of the pinnacles, especially on the Iowa side of girls basketball in our area. It's
funny because, and this is a long time ago, but we used to do a Hoops headliner similar to the Score Standout Now. Our show was Hoops Central. And so we did a promo for it, and we used the athletes in the area. And it was, it was Chase and Randall, Lindsey Smith. Was it Brandon Voss at North Scott?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Brandon Voss at North Scott. And then I think Cannon Burridge at UT were the 4 kids that we used for the promo. I would love to see that promo.
I think Lindsey Smith was, I want to say she was the Quad City Times Athlete of the Year the same year as Chasen.
Yeah, yep. They were both seniors, and and you mentioned just an outstanding person too.
Yeah.
And I've seen her here and there, as the years have gone on and stuff, and always super respectful, super polite, and all that kind of stuff. But It's always cool when somebody becomes an all-time record holder at a school, but then when you hear the person that they pass up, that's cool too, because I think one, it made me feel old, but two, like that name, I mean, Lindsey Smith was as good as it gets both on and off the court. So it's cool to see that. And that just kind of shows the depth of high school basketball, girls wise. And we're just staying on the Iowa side of the river. We haven't talked about the Illinois side of the river, but it's continuing to get more talented and younger too. Yeah. Like younger athletes are making an impact more quickly than before.
Well, that's the thing I think you're going to see with the Caitlin Clark effect too. Now, right now, it hasn't translated as quickly as I thought it would to, like in Iowa, high school girls basketball's kind of struggling. Mm-hmm. Some teams aren't fielding teams, and I was a little surprised by that because you're coming off the Caitlin Clark things. People would ever be going off for girls basketball, but I think what I've been hearing is it's the kids who are in 7th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. So like I think in a couple of years, all of a sudden you're going to see a huge explosion in terms of participation in girls basketball. You're going to see a lot of talented kids come up, because of they grew up, watching Caitlin and going to probably the Carver games, getting an autograph from Caitlin. I mean, I think like there's going to be so many stories out there where you go and talk to. So what got you involved in? What got you interested in basketball? Oh man, Caitlin Clark.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a great point.
Like everybody's, I think for some point is going to have a Caitlin Clark story to say this is why I got started. It's like MJ. Remember when when MJ came out and everybody was playing basketball. And all you talk like why Kobe got because of MJ. Yeah, like you're going to have all these people who are like I got started because of Caitlin Clark. You
also have on the flip side of it the Steph Curry effect where he came out and he was shooting amazing percentage from three and deep threes, and everyone's like, this is amazing. And the next thing you know, like it's become a thing where more and more people shoot, and that's just the effect of people sitting at home watching it saying, I want to do that. Obviously not to that level. I said I wanted to do that, but it doesn't mean I can go out there and do it.
What do you like seeing more in a basketball game? Like a great dunk or a logo three?
You know what? Almost a logo. I'm such a dork because like I think that's what's ruined the game. The NBA game is you either shoot 35, 43s or it's something at the rim. And like, there's nothing in between now. So that it kind of annoys me. I love watching. I'm a sucker for an inbounds play, like a baseline inbounds play. Like I will stop if something runs and I'll go back and I'll look at it just because I think those are awesome. But to your question, a logo three, I think. What about you?
I think my favorite's still an alley-oop. Did you see that alley-oop in the Iowa State-Kansas game?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
One. But I mean, the thing that made I think Caitlin's logo threes so special, and yeah, she missed a ton, but like the one that she had to break the record. Yeah. Like who goes down with a record-breaking shot on the line and takes it from where she takes it and just drains it. Yeah. And I think every single person in that arena, every single person watching it on TV, A, knew it was coming, and B, knew she was going to hit it. Yeah. I mean, it's again, I don't think I've ever had it in my lifetime where I just you knew exactly how that thing was going to play out as it was unfolding. Yeah. And that's what's incredible about what she's been able to do.
Bobby Metcalf joins us right now on Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. There is a Super Bowl to get to, but some of our best arguments, and you've been really mean to me and yelled at me in the past, but it's been on Bears Lions, and we're not going to argue Bears Lions, but just in general, we talked a little bit, I think, when you're on the show the first time you're on, but the Bears have a head coach now. I think the last time we talked
was the day he got hired.
Yeah, so we hadn't even known it yet, right?
I was so negative, and I was like, I'd love to be a Bears Johnson, but they're gonna hire Mike McCarthy, and then literally like 2 hours later, I saw Ben. I was like, I love being wrong. I love being wrong.
So you got to be pretty excited, not just with Ben Johnson, but just the staff too that he's kind of put around.
Yeah, I love the fact that the Lions don't have any coaches now.
Well, they still have really.
They're on the Bears staff.
There's this one guy named Dan Campbell who's.
Yeah, well, how much was it Dan Campbell and how much?
Make sure he looks at you the entire time.
How much it was Dan Campbell? How much was Ben Johnson? I guess we'll
find out.
So. No, I mean like
it's important to surround, and that's what I think I like about what Ben has done. Is that he's surrounded, like that's the best thing that Dan Campbell did was when he got there, he surrounded himself with good young coaches that had played the game too. And I think that's kind of what, this is weird, what Ben Johnson's done.
Look, I'm really excited. I mean, as a Bears fan, I think you have to be. This is the first time since Lovey that I feel like I have a competent coach. This is the first time that they actually hired a guy that every single team wanted.
That's the big thing.
I mean, every team. So what I don't want to have happen, and I know this is going to happen. It's the same thing they have with Caleb Williams, right?
I'm really, really positive, but let me tell you how they're going to screw it up.
If he struggles, right? you're going to all of a sudden have all the national pundits go, did the Bears get it wrong? Did they hire the wrong guy? Especially if, one of the other hires ends up having a great season.
Yeah.
It's like, no, stop. It's the same with Caleb Williams because Jaden Daniels Rookie of the Year and Caleb Williams, average.
Yeah.
Oh, they got it wrong. It's like, no, every single team wanted Caleb Williams. Every single team wanted Ben Johnson.
Yeah.
Like, the Bears didn't get this one wrong.
The Bears did what they were supposed to do, what everybody wanted them to do. That doesn't mean it's going to work out, but they did what they were supposed to do. It's funny because you said they finally have a good coach for the first time since Lovie Smith. We think so. He's a great offensive mind.
Right.
And he's going to dial up a bunch of good plays. The rest of the game, which I'm not saying I don't think he will be. I think he'll be fine. I think he learned a lot from Coach Campbell.
But this is the first time I'm actually excited about a Bears coaching hire. Like Mark Trestman, it was like, what?
Oh, there's been some really.
And then John Fox, it was like, oh no.
But let me tell you though, like when they announced my guy, I got to put him away. That's too much Dan in one show. I wasn't doing backflips.
Even though when he said he was going to go bite some kneecaps?
I thought that was overblown and dumb. Like I didn't think it was bad what he said, and I thought people just took it and ran with it. It was no worse than what was Flus? What about Flus? Didn't he do like cars or something like that?
It was hits,
which was just as stupid. And just but I didn't. You just gotta wait. It's like a rookie quarterback. You gotta wait to see how it. But I do like who he's put around him. The Antoine Randall L thing made sense. It's not like, and trust me, the Lions are gonna be okay without their wide receivers coach. He's a good coach. I'm not saying he's not, but it's not like it's a crippler. But also he's going back home. Yeah. Like that's his hometown and where he grew up and where he went to high school and stuff. So that makes sense as well.
I'm excited, but at the same time, I'm really nervous because if this doesn't work out, I don't see it ever working out for the Bears. You have now the hand-picked head coach, the head coach that every team wanted. You had the quarterback that prior to this year, every team wanted. You still have solid receiver. You've got good pieces there. I'm not predicting Super Bowl. I'm not saying I want a Super Bowl this year, but like if we're talking about another 6-win season this year, it's like, well, crap.
So I don't know if you're too young to remember this, and you probably aren't. When the Lions hired Steve Mariucci, I felt this way. Now I was a lot younger, but I was like, they finally got the guy that everybody said that they should go get, and they went and got him. And it didn't work out. And I felt the same way. And it didn't work out for a long time after that. There was a few good years throughout the Jim Caldwell years, whatever. But the Bears have won, have again, so far, won a postseason.
3 straight.
Or not a postseason, but an offseason.
3 straight offseason wins, baby.
Yeah, but I don't know. And I'm not being a jerk, but like, I don't know if that equates. I don't know if it equates to, it's all wait and see. And if I'm a Bears fan, and I don't know, maybe I don't like the Bears, so I know that. But like, people jump the gun too much on them. And I'm not saying you, but sometimes fans are fanatics, but don't start the Super Bowl talk. Don't start all that nonsense. Just be modest. Like when the Lions started getting good, I didn't go running around like an idiot because I'm like, I didn't trust it, first and foremost, still don't. And second, like you just don't have that ability. That was what annoyed me the most last year was that, that Nick Wright, and I know he's not a Bears fan, or even Parkins, who is a Bears fan, are talking about like playoffs and Super Bowl and all that kind of stuff. Just pump the brakes. Maybe predict they go 9-8 and then be happy if you're wrong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Be happy if they don't do that. If you're a Bears fan, Myles Garrett, it says he wants out of Cleveland. And as a Lions fan, that's all I've been doing the last 12 hours is reading the pros and cons to that. So I'm going to toss it to you because one of the other teams that was brought up with the Chicago Bears. Pros and cons with a Myles Garrett. What would you give up for him? Let's just assume that's going to cost a 1 and a 2 and another draft pick. Is that safe, or do you think it's going to cost two ones?
I think it's going to be more expensive. I think it's going to be 2 ones.
Okay, so let's say it's 2 1s and a 6th round pick. Just another one thing.
You're getting the defensive player of the year in his prime. Like you're going to pay a lot.
Yeah.
Do I want Myles Garrett on the Bears? Absolutely, I want Myles Garrett on the Bears. I think all of a sudden that pass rush becomes incredible with Myles Garrett on the Bears, and you got Montez Sweat still, and I think they've got good pieces at every level on that defense. But okay, you give up your first. So how do you get an offensive lineman? Still got all the offensive lineman.
So let's say you have to give up your first and 2 seconds. Let's say your first and the 2 seconds that you have are gone, and you have Myles Garrett.
I don't think the Bears should pick up Myles Garrett unless it's for pennies on the dollar.
Yeah.
I just think. I think Myles Garrett.
Yes. The cap money.
I think Myles Garrett is a luxury when you are close, not when you have an offensive line that gave up 60 whatever 70 sacks this year. When you've got a new head coach coming in who's installing a new system, so Caleb's gonna have to learn another system. You got to protect Caleb at every single step of the way this year. You got to make sure he's upright.
Yep.
He's lucky that he played all 17 games.
Yeah,
really lucky.
And I think you knew it, and like I'll give you credit because we talked about it, but everyone talked about taking care of Caleb as he came in, and they looked at like toys, pieces, and they didn't talk about up front. And I was banging this drum of like, you got to protect a guy. I mean, you look at some of the beginning times of the Lions, they built through the trenches, and I'm not just using the Lions. A lot of teams built through the trenches. I think they got to fix those first and foremost. As a Lions fan, I'd love to see Myles Garrett. Now, I don't think he wants because they're going to give Aiden Hutchinson a boatload of money in a couple months, and I think he's worth it. But like, I don't know particularly if he comes in. I think he's got 2 years left at like $20 million a year. I think the Lions can afford him. I think you guys could afford him, the Bears. But I don't know if he automatically says, I also want to be the highest paid guy in the league, because I think he wants to win.
Yeah.
So I think that's the caveat for a lot of things is, would you go to a team for a year and play at the $20 million, which I'd play for $20 million, but that's a whole different story. So anyways, I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see, because that's a game changing. I think as a Lions fan, I want to get him more to keep him away from you guys or the the Vikings or the Packers than anything else. It's also like, if you told me Myles Garrett got traded to the Jaguars, I would be like, I just picked a team. I'd be like, okay, that's fine. I'm good with it. But if you told me Myles Garrett got traded to the Bears, I'd be like, son of a bitch, why didn't we get him on our team?
If you told me Myles Garrett got traded to the Kansas City Chiefs, I would also be livid.
Or the Eagles.
Or the Eagles.
Yeah, no, I
but
get you.
I think, I mean, I think that'd be great for the Lions. I mean, I think that's a perfect team.
Yeah.
That's a team built to win now. Yep. And, you know,
his Brad Holmes came from the Rams, and the Rams went through, as he was leaving, this little F them picks. That was their motto. After you built through the draft, you get to a point where you don't need to worry about the picks anymore. Yeah. What are you going to get at 28 and maybe 20, let's say 32 next year for fun? What are you going to get at 28 and 32 in the next two drafts that are gonna move the needle that much? When you also got a lot of guys coming up that are playing at like Pro Bowl and all pro levels that you're going to have to sign to. So,
you're going to have to pay a lot of those guys.
All right, let's talk about this game. First and foremost, do you care about the halftime show at all? Do you know what the halftime show is?
I do.
Do you know it because you're in the news business and you had to do a story on it, or do you just know who it is?
No, I had forgotten until I saw something today that reminded me who it was.
It's Kendrick Lamar.
Kendrick Lamar, right? And then SZA.
Okay, I don't know.
SZA, in case you
know. Thank you for. No, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, it's Kendrick Lamar.
The best part is if you would have put that in front of me, SC, I would have been like, and SCA.
I wish they'd really been. I wish they had been. Wish they'd done Kendrick Lamar and Drake, a little collab. That would have been fun. But like, no, I don't. Have you cared about the halftime show before? Sometimes I have.
Which ones have you cared about?
The Eminem one with Eminem, Dre, and all that. That was awesome.
Amazing.
Like growing up, I mean, the Prince one. I mean, Prince was awesome. And honestly, I was a huge Beatles fan, so Paul McCartney, even though it wasn't that great a halftime show. Yeah. But if you asked me right now to like list all the halftime shows, I couldn't tell you.
No, I don't usually. And like, I'm gotta be careful how I say this. While the people that don't care about the game usually care about halftime, aka maybe the wives, maybe, but that's being stereotypical because that's not true. Like, I usually am like loading up on food or something like that.
Like, did Taylor Swift do a halftime show once? I don't know if she did. Probably not. I think Lady Gaga did one a couple years ago. Rihanna, I know Rihanna did one.
Justin Timberlake did one, and I like Justin Timberlake a lot.
Justin Timberlake did one.
I thought it was really good.
He has since not been invited back, in case you...
No, he hasn't. Okay, there's halftime show. Do you care about the commercials?
Yeah. I watch for the game, but I always like the commercials. I think they've got... I feel like I also grew up during the like perfect era of commercials. Like, you had some great ones, and now it's just like you watch them, and it's like they ruin them. They air them before the shows now. Yeah, they air them before the Super Bowl.
Yep.
So like, I'm already seeing all these commercials, so it's just like, oh yeah, I saw that one. I remember that one. Oh yeah, I saw this one. And so like, I do care about the commercials, but I also feel like they've ruined them to a degree. So it's like, okay, fine.
All right, the game itself. I like. There's a shirt that has like a Lions logo that says, "I hope they both lose," and I probably would get that. Who do you think wins this game? First off, who are you rooting for?
Eagles, 100%.
Okay.
I don't understand the like negative, the hatred for the Eagles. Yeah, I mean, yeah, from a Philly standpoint, like, what's the other option? You got the worst most annoying franchise. Sorry, Chiefs fans, you can come after me if you want, but like I can't stand them. They're like
That's going to be the Lions in 5 years.
it probably will be, but hey,
No,
I
wish.
but like I can't stand watching the they're like the Lakers of in terms of
Were you a Bulls fan?
yeah, but they're not even that.
Yeah.
Like with Mahomes is flopping, which he's now starting to do. All that stuff he's doing. And you can get into the whole whether the officiating is rigged or not. It's amazing how every single time there happens to be a moment the Chiefs need a call, they get a call.
I don't think it's rigged and or fixed in which like they predetermined
Right.
stuff like that. I just think like these guys get calls, just kind of like Jordan used to get calls, probably tenfold. Like, I mean, superstars get calls. It just seems like they get, but then again, then the spot's not the right spot.
Yeah,
And they look at the spot.
like look, you can get into an argument about the late hits on Mahomes.
Yeah.
How do you look at that Josh Allen sneak and say, "Yep, he's short"?
Yeah.
Like how?
No, I get it.
It's just like every single time.
Or the play before it, the spot wasn't right.
Yeah, or you can go into the holding on Bradbury a couple years ago in the first matchup between these two, or you can go to the when the Falcons game a couple years ago when they had pass interference and they didn't call it. Blatant pass interference doesn't get called. It just seems like every single time they need a call to go their way. So anyway, but that you can get conspiracies there. But just I'm just tired of the Chiefs. I'm tired of.
I get it.
Like I'm tired of watching. In the Bills game last week or 2 weeks ago, Mahomes goes in the end zone, gets tackled as he's going in the end zone. Kelsey,
Yep.
and then somebody comes over and flails, and he draws the penalty.
Yep.
Like I'm just tired of it.
No,
Like
I'm
tired of that.
So
stuff.
with that being said, though, you think the Chiefs win because
Yes. Like
give me a score.
I'll go 31-28.
I had 27-24 Chiefs. Here's my only thing, and I'm rooting for I'm not rooting for the Chiefs. I'm rooting for the Eagles. But like my brother-in-law is an Eagle fan, and I like my brother-in-law. Like he's a really good dude. I like him a lot. My niece, and obviously I love my niece, but like I don't like seeing other people happy.
Well, yeah, that's why I never went
I
to the
don't
Lions.
know any Chiefs fans.
I had no problem with the
only
Lions.
ones-
I had no problem with the Lions until I found out you were a Lions fan. And I was like,
Exactly.
God, I hate the Lions so
Exactly.
much.
Like I don't want to see if I can't be happy. I don't want to see anybody else. I guess there's Chiefs fans out there, but they don't resonate to me just because like my good buddy Jake lives in Kansas City now. He's a Chiefs fan and he's a legit Chiefs fan. The ones that annoy me are a lot of my kids' friends. Like I'll be coaching 7th grade basketball, and during the season I'd be like, I make sure I watch the Lions this weekend, and they'd be like, oh, I'm a Chiefs fan, and I'm like, how are you a Chiefs fan? I've always liked them my whole life. Well, you're in 7th grade.
Yeah.
So what, for 4 or 5 years you've just liked the best team in the league is all you've liked.
So do you like dynasties or not?
I don't.
I hate a dynasty unless it's a team that I'm a fan of.
So what are the dynasties so obviously in football it was
you're
the
the Patriots. When the
And you can
Patriots
go-
are winning, I
you can go
couldn't.
before
But
that.
honestly, I think I dislike the Chiefs dynasty, this Chiefs team more than I dislike any of those Patriots
Wow.
teams. The Patriots teams were just good, and yeah, they cheated. But yeah, the Patriots teams were just good.
Yeah.
Like this team this year, they're not that good.
But I'm a Bulls. I love the Bulls back in the day.
Exactly.
I'm not a
I love the Bulls
now.
fan. Once Jordan was, but I'm much more of a player fan than I am a team fan in NBA.
Yeah.
So like I love the Bulls with Jordan, but then Duncan came along with the Spurs, and so I was watching the Spurs. I was a huge Spurs fan for
Yeah.
years, and like then I really grew up to appreciate LeBron. So like when I wouldn't call LeBron being on a dynasty in any sense of the way, but like
I mean, he's won a lot of them.
but he's won a lot of them. But I really
condensed
appreciate
down
watching.
on the
So
same
like
team.
I do enjoy dynasties when there's somebody I want to be involved. But
what I like about him is it galvanizes people if you don't care about that team. Like you're interested in the game this weekend because you want to see the Chiefs lose.
No, I'm a football
It's kind of
fan. I mean, it would
yeah,
matter.
that's true. But
like
it motivates people that might like the Yankees. The Chiefs are the Yankees now. Like you either love them or you hate them. And so I think if your team's not in it, you like anybody but. Although I've had a lot of people like going into the championship weekend saying like, not these two teams.
I know.
Anybody but these two teams. Don't give me those two teams.
I mean, that's
But you're
because
still gonna
Commanders
watch
and
it.
Bills would have been fun. We haven't seen a Commanders-Bills matchup.
It would have been really fun. Lions and Bills would have been really fun.
Well, yeah, but
but that didn't.
if you want to watch the Lions lose, but
one of these years, man.
what bothers me, and I just get too emotional about it because I wish I could just go into the game and be like, whatever. Okay, the Chiefs win, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be so mad if the Chiefs win. I'm just gonna be watching it, and especially if it goes the way I expect it to go, where they'll be come down to the wire, and there's gonna be we're gonna call.
I wouldn't mind it if they won by 2 touchdowns and like they're just the better team.
Yeah.
That's what's going to tick me off, is if it's like something funky and something weird.
But I'm just going to watch because it happened last year. It happened in the first game against them, and it happened in the first one they won. It's just I'm sitting, not so much, but like the last 2 especially. I'm just sitting there and I'm just like,
do you partake in sports gambling?
Not anymore. What is the line on that game?
2.
Chiefs
Something
by
like
2.
that. Yeah, I don't. In a game like this, I just kind of look at like more prop bets than anything else. Like unless I feel strongly one way or another about, I haven't done much. I'll do a lot. I'll do a lot eventually. So all right, Bobby's
I also want the Eagles to win because I love Saquon. I remember Saquon at Penn State.
Yeah.
I remember Saquon the Penn State game against Iowa where they actually like there was one. I think there was one where they shut him down the moment he went off. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
The one they went off, he went off.
Yeah, he went off. Like, but I remember I have a lot of respect for Saquon. Yeah. Like, I would love to see him get a title. I don't care about anyone else on that Eagles team, but Saquon.
I said last week I've gone through stretches where I've been Eagles and Colts fans because of the 2 Yahoos from our area that played for them.
Yeah.
So like there's been years I've rooted for and followed the Eagles because of what Julian was doing. Same with the Colts. So there's no hatred really for the Eagles in my mind.
I'm assuming Julian wants the Eagles to win.
Next year I won't have a Super Bowl get together. My kids are having some friends over and families over and stuff, and I'm not gonna have one next year because my team will be in it, and I don't want anybody around when I'm throwing stuff at the TV and all that kind of fun stuff. Bobby, thanks for coming out to the. You got to be to work at a certain time, and it's 3 hours to get back into. I mean, you're.
I gotta take a flight.
It's like going to Chicago. I appreciate you doing this. You did it last time on video, and I said, you know what? Come on out to the house. So you do this again. I enjoy this. I enjoy having somebody in studio that I can kind of just banter about. I don't know if we made any sense whatsoever.
Hopefully it was entertaining.
But we did it for 50 minutes, which is a beautiful thing. So, all right, coming up after this break, we'll talk more about the Iowa Hawkeyes loss last night. Former Bettendorf standout, former Hawkeye. Nicholas Baer, the Bear Cage, will be here in just a little bit to talk about that. Then also a little later in the show, my mentor, Dan Burich. It's Wildman Wednesday, so we'll catch up with Dan Burich as well. We got a busy show on a Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. You're watching Off the Air. We'll be back right after this.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend, Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air on a Wednesday, a hump day here in the Quad Cities, and it was the Iowa Hawkeyes looking to get over the hump last night at Carver Hawkeye Arena, and they were not able to do that, so we'll do our normal post-game chat with the one and only Bear Cage himself, Nicholas Baer. Cheesy way to intro in, but they couldn't quite get over the hump, and we got on here, Nicholas, and that's the first thing you kind of said was, Matt, it was right there for us. Your thoughts on maybe letting one slip away at Carver Hawkeye Arena?
Yeah, I
I stand by that. I feel like for the most part, like we were right there. A lot of times I know, there were a couple times where obviously we could have gave up. I think we were down 12 at one point in the second half, but just felt like for the most part we were kind of clawing back, trying to cut it to 7 a couple times, cut it to 6, finally cut it to 3, and had 2 really good looks to potentially tie it. But yeah, I mean that's a really good team. Ranked number 7 team in the country, and obviously we're shorthanded. At this point in the season, so bummer to let that one slip just because the hour's getting late here a little bit, but. Yeah, I obviously wish we could have had a chance to win that one, but overall, it's a pretty good game.
You said shorthanded, and no pun intended with the right hand of Owen Freeman, but Owen is out for the season, announced on Monday. It's kind of obvious, but what does this do to this team? How does it change the dynamic? Because I was telling Tom Kakert on the show yesterday, you're losing your best player at your thinnest position, which I think complicates things even more.
Yeah, I think, on the whole, we saw it a little bit tonight, right? There's going to be more volume for Peyton and for Josh Dix, which those two, they stepped up and played really well tonight. Peyton with 20, I think, had 25, and Josh 27. Or Peyton with 23, Josh with 27. So there's going to be more volume for those guys. I thought, offensively, the flow I thought was better. And one thing was notable, obviously, we're not running as many post ISOs that we would run for Owen. We're not going to our 5 men, maybe 4 offense. But I thought for the most part, like Riley Mulvey played with energy, Evan Bronze played with energy, had a couple buckets, rolls to the rim, that type of stuff. But I think the thing that's just going to make it more difficult with Owen being out is just kind of that margin for error is even slimmer now, considering where we're going to be getting some of our offense from. But defensively, I thought, obviously Trakoff and Wren, had, a really good game tonight, but I thought defensively, kind of that Riley and Evan brought was a little bit better, but yeah, there's definitely an Owen Freeman sized hole at the 5 spot for sure.
If you're Fran McCaffrey, you tinker with lineups. I think a lot of people thought he would just plug and play Laje and kind of go. He tweaked it a little bit, and Traore had been playing really well. Didn't play well last night, but had been playing well. He goes with Traore. Brock comes off the bench. Owen no longer there. Mulvey gets the start. Do you think he'll tinker and kind of mess with things for maybe the rest of the season until he finds something he likes without Owen Freeman?
I think so. I don't think he's, my understanding wouldn't be like he's necessarily committed to a certain, 5. I think for sure Josh Payton would be in there. I would think Drew Thelwell would be in there at this point too. So, but outside of that, I think it's pretty open. I think right now, based on that matchup, like with Trey Coffin run, we definitely want to start with a 5. And, but as we go on, if there's teams that are maybe a little bit smaller, I wouldn't be surprised if we start, more guard heavy, so to speak. But, yeah, coach is never afraid to kind of mix up the lineups, especially this time of year, potentially with some injuries and things going on of that nature. Like, wouldn't surprise me if there's kind of continual tweaking that way.
Kind of talked with Tom Kakert a little bit today or on Tuesday, and he said, and we kind of joked, why not maybe, and you're a shooter, why not just try to outshoot everybody? Do you get tempted to do those kind of things and maybe go shooters all over the court, but you sacrifice so much inside? And in this league, as you well know, it's a big league. You go to Maryland, you go to places like that, there's some big dudes inside. So long-term wise, is it just, would you as a shooter get tempted to put a bunch of shooters out there and try to outshoot everybody every night?
Right now, like, it's kind of what we're doing when you really look at it. Right now, the one thing I've been kind of looking at that I've been tracking a little bit different from past seasons has been our free throws. Not only just our free throw shooting, but how many attempts that we're getting. Because I know Coach always kind of prides himself on, we'll make more free throws than our opponents will attempt. And this year, obviously, we go to Owen inside to draw fouls. But in the past, it's been, Luka, Tyler Cook, guys who are going to draw fouls, rack up fouls, attack the rim, and get some easy ones down the line. But we haven't been in the bonus as much this season, just as a result of that. So, and part of that's because we've been taking a lot more jump shots as well. So, yeah, Peyton's going to have to shoot at a high level from 3. So is Josh, and need some other guys to chip in as well. But, I think the only feasible way is really if these defensive rebounding numbers improve, which I think, honestly, Matt, I might be tempted to go the opposite way. Try to play 2 bigs together, see how that goes, see if there's ways that can help with that. And I know it's going to limit shooting a little bit, but maybe picking some things up on the defensive glass and being able to run that way. So we'll see. A lot of tinkering. I'm sure they'll be making some lineup changes for sure.
In the world of sports gambling, which I dabble in, there was this automatic thought of, and they did cover, but it was a -3 or -7, 7-point line tonight. But, as I talked to people during the day, I said, this feels like this game where you think a couple games ago against Indiana, Peyton went crazy, Dix went crazy. I'm like, I can see those guys both scoring 30 and Iowa knocking them off. Well, they almost did. They combined for 50. Is it going to be where they're going to have to get high volume and high production from those two guys each and every night because Owens 17-7 isn't going to be there every night?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Those guys are going to have to play at a really high level, similar to how they played tonight. But, I mean, I think I also look at some other areas where they're going to need some production as well. Thelwell's been pretty good this whole year, especially this most recent stretch. He's been shooting the ball well. But, more so from that kind of that 4 spot, whether it's Traore, Dembele. I know Dembele's been playing the 5 a little bit too. But I think that's a spot where you're going to have to try to see a little bit of an uptick in production too. But there's no bones about it. Josh and Peyton are our two guys or two horses that we're going to feed and try to get shots up and try to get them in best positions to be successful. So, I would say that volume is not going anywhere for those two guys anytime soon.
I think the first time we did this, I think it was after Indiana and they're heading out to California. They're 3-2 in conference, and there's a positive vibe around this program. It's been 5 of 6. And I'm trying to think back to your career if there was ever a stretch like that, and I'm sure you can tell me if there was, but when there's been stretches like that in your career, what's the locker room like? And more in particular, how does Fran handle these things? And how do you think maybe he's approaching this team, these guys? What do you say? How do you keep everything together when probably the rest of the outside world is trying to tear you apart?
Well, man, let's take a trip down memory lane. Let's open up the yearbook, pop it open. I remember this team kind of reminds me a little bit of my redshirt sophomore year, where we kind of we did pretty okay in non-conference, struggled a little bit, and really came on late. But I remember we were 14-13, 6-8 in conference, and pretty much people had written us off. It was season's over. There's no way we're gonna be able to come back. And we rip off I think 4 or 5 in a row. Indiana at home, Maryland, J-Bo shot against Wisconsin.
Yes.
That season. So that season where obviously it was a different roster construction, a lot more freshman type of thing. But the reason I mention that is because there's plenty of reasons to write this team off right now. But the thing with college basketball, especially in February, things can change pretty quickly. There's another good opportunity at home on Saturday. I mean, right now looking at us, we're 13-9. Got to get to 20 wins. That's pretty much, so 9 games left. Got to go 7-9. And there are some Bears on this schedule for sure. But a few of them are at home. And there's good opportunities there. But I would say in terms of how coach kind of handles these, usually a mix from my experience. Sometimes, it's, pretty intense, film sessions, which, if that's warranted for sure. But on the flip side of it too, coach is also pretty good about giving players love when they need it. I think coach knows for the most part which guys need maybe kicking the tail a little bit versus who needs just to be lifted up a little bit and get some love that way. So it's different. I know they just came off of a week off or 8 days without a game. So I'm sure there was some different things that they worked on during that time and tried to get better. And I thought overall this was a better performance. That was going to be one question I was going to ask you too, Matt. My opinion kind of on this game was more so Purdue won this game. I didn't feel like this was a game where Iowa lost it or it was we found a way to lose. For the most part, that's a really good team. Braden Smith played really well, but on the whole, I thought we played okay. I was kind of curious to get your thoughts too, if you thought this was that type of game as well.
No, I felt like Iowa came out in the beginning and played well. I mean, when you sit at halftime 36-36, that's all you want, right? You want to be in the mix and have the ability to win at home. I thought I got a little sideways, if you will, in the second half, and I felt like they dug themselves too big of a hole late. And if they could if they could keep it a little bit closer, like you mentioned, got back within 3, a few shots to tie it, couldn't get over the hump. But no, I don't think they came out. I mean, they didn't shoot it great. And I think in order to win tonight, they needed to shoot like 40% from 3 or, high 30s from 3. And they shot 11 of 30. So what is that? And I'm doing my math, probably 35%-ish, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But so I mean, and there you go. If you make a few more, it's probably a different game. But no, I don't feel like, I just felt the better team probably won tonight. And without Owen inside, your defense isn't going to get better. And giving up 90 is probably too much against a team like that. So, but no, I don't think you walked out of there going like, man, like against Penn State, which they won. You're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they won that game. But they figured out a way to correct it and get it done down towards the stretch. Now, I've told everybody, and everybody knows this, like, I've never criticized ever the Bear Cage or Joe Wieskamp or Brock Harding. Like, I got my guys, and I'm biased. I wear it, and people know that. So I'm going to ask you, Brock comes off the bench. I thought he responded well. I thought he responded well against Minnesota when he sat a lot of the second half and then came in and almost brought him back. What are your thoughts of him coming off the bench? Hadn't played well, especially against Ohio State, hadn't played well. Was that like you lost some size inside, so you're making up some size in the backcourt by kind of evening things out? Was that just a reset? And your thoughts on how he played today after coming off the bench, played like 23 minutes, scored 11 points. I think had 5 assists, something like that.
Yeah, I think that was probably more of a product of coaches trying to mix things up a little bit with Brock coming off the bench. Like I remember one of my years, like we had a pretty down year, but like I was kind of in and out of the starting lineup just based on one, how the team was doing, too, like if we were in a bad stretch, like trying to mix things up. So there's a couple things you can either do about it. You can either kind of hang your head and mope, which Brock didn't do at all. Like he got out there and for the most part, I thought did a nice job, tonight, and was out on the floor during that big comeback that we had. So, I thought, 11-5, a lot of those coming at the end, he did hit a big 3, which is nice. So, I hope he can kind of continue in that vein, but I think whether he starts or not, like he's still going to be, a guy that's going to be, playing 20 plus minutes. So, I'm not as hung up on, starting, not starting, but, towards the end of the game, he was definitely in, trying to help us with that comeback. So that's generally where I see, where I know coach has the most value in that too. So hopefully that trend can continue that way.
Nicholas Baer joining us right now. A few more for the Bear Cage. Up next, Wisconsin. No love lost between Wisconsin. I'd love to, I guess before we talk about them, and this just popped in my head, do you have a favorite moment against Wisconsin? Was it that victory that we just kind of talked about? Was it where are you at when it comes to favorite memories against the Badgers, or are there any?
Yeah, no, that was a special one. My the year Jordan Bohannon, hit that game winner. The reason that was special too is we're trying to push for the tournament, trying to make a push. But also, it was a really good team. Like they had Nigel Hayes, Bronson Koenig, obviously Ethan Happ, Quad City's very own. So that's a special memory for me. I played pretty well that game, hit 4 threes. It was part of our comeback as well. So that's definitely one that stands out. Yeah, I know no love lost with Wisconsin by any chance. I kind of have a rule of thumb just with like my friends when we're kind of talking, and it's like, yeah, whenever Wisconsin loses, it's a good day. So no offense, Ethan. I understand by all means, but not my favorite program by any means.
With this team coming to town, boy, they start 2 7-footers. I mean, here comes size. So is this, when we kind of talked about a little bit, is it just you're going to get beat on the boards, like let it go and see if you can make 23s, or how do you approach Wisconsin? Because this is probably the most drastic game you're going to have. I mean, you do go to Maryland in a little bit, and they're big and good inside. So, but this is that challenge of bigs early on. What do you see with Wisconsin on Saturday, I think?
Yeah, Saturday. I would imagine they'll probably stick with Riley in there. I would be interested to see if they either stick with that same lineup or insert another big with kind of those Twin Towers. But, honestly, the size, last time we played, gave 116. They whacked, I think, like 24 threes or whatever. So, I think that's probably going to be the bigger priority around trying to rectify that from last game. So, I think that's probably going to be the focal point there. And I think for the most part, like, I don't think anybody needs reminding of, the last time we played these guys and what that looked like for us and how that felt. So, I'm excited. I think it'd be a good game. Hopefully it's a good crowd Saturday, early game. So, in terms of that, I think that's probably just looking back on the most recent performance against them is probably going to be the biggest motivator and really all you should need.
Two more for you. You mentioned that last game, 116. After the game, Wisconsin players actually said, like, we knew they didn't want to guard. I mean, it was out there in the media and all that kind of stuff. When you're a player and you hear stuff like that, what does that do? I mean, that's got to be remembered as they get ready to come back to Iowa City this year. And was there ever a situation like that when you were a player where you took comments that you knew about and turned them to a motivating factor to get a win for the Hawkeyes?
Not so much, maybe not so much like in the media, well, like things like that. Like, I guess during my time, I didn't have anything as explicit as that come across, but more so just like, I remember like one time we were on the road, I think at Rutgers, and we were down and they like try to like throw a alley-oop off the backboard to himself or something. And like more like that stuff like stuck with us and stuck with me. It's like, hey, remember last time we played these guys, like they try to like embarrass us, and like that type of stuff definitely stuck with me when we were playing those guys again. So, but yeah, I mean, there shouldn't be an extra. I mean, obviously, Iowa-Wisconsin's a rivalry for sure. So there's already some motivation there. But yeah, you add on the gasoline to the fire there with some of those some of those comments after the game, and really shouldn't be a whole lot of need for extra motivation, especially given where we're standing in the Big Ten right now, the goals we try to make into the tournament. Like it's all out on the line there.
It would be silly not to ask you about Sunday because you're a Hawkeye, and I know you were probably watching Carver Hawkeye Arena Sunday. That place loaded, packed, rocking. And it wasn't that way. There was a good program when you were there. The women's program was really good. To see that, your thoughts that go through your mind, and you got to be proud to be a Hawkeye. I mean, not it's the women's program, but you got to be everybody's that's a Hawkeye has got to be proud of what that weekend and that day was like in Iowa City.
I mean, anybody associated with the University of Iowa's got to be proud of that. With obviously the career Caitlin had, for sure, that everything she's done with women's basketball. But I mean, like, yeah, to have the Time Athlete Person of the Year, like have her jersey, in Carver forever, like that's truly generational and something that doesn't come along very often. So, I mean, definitely special. Obviously, it helps. Had a big win as well. That always helps lift the spirits too. So, thrilled for Caitlin. Definitely well deserved, and just pretty cool to see like that arena filled like that and have that much energy for sure.
With that arena looking the way it did, I thought about this on the way home last night. I said, I wonder, do you remember your best atmosphere at Carver Hawkeye Arena? And what I remember, and I don't know why I remember this, but I think it was against Michigan State. And you knocked down some big threes, and Carver was just rolling. I don't know if you know what game I'm talking about or anything, but do you have a game at Carver or some games at Carver where you're like, that day, that crowd was it for me when it came to being a Hawkeye?
Yeah, it was. I know the exact game actually. So it was Indiana, my redshirt freshman year. So I was walking on the time. Indiana had Yogi Ferrell, OG Anunoby. They were basically we were playing for a share of the Big Ten title. If we lost, essentially, Indiana had a clear shot. If we won, we had a chance to get a share of it. So we unfortunately lost, but it was senior day. We were down. I think we were down 9 at the time. My Wildman got a bucket. Got an and-1, and then I hit back-to-back threes. My second three to tie it. It was like an 11-0 run. Crowd's going nuts, full student section. Place was as loud as I've heard it. And that's definitely one that sticks out to me. Just like, one as a walk on the time, it's like, all right, like I can, play at this level, which is pretty cool. And then, you got 15,400 people losing their minds too. So definitely a special moment for me with that, just kind of validating like, hey, I, deserve it at the University of Iowa. I can play at this level, but also just being a part of a program that big and support that big as well. So, yeah, I had pretty quick recall with that, Matt. So it's clearly stuck with me.
Am I crazy about a Michigan State game? Was there a Michigan State game?
Nope, Michigan State. Yeah, that was a good one too. Same year.
You guys won, right?
Yeah, they were ranked number one. They were ranked number one at the time. So we had a court storming the whole thing. I believe that's the Michigan State.
Yeah.
There's a couple Michigan State games for sure, but
You hit a couple big threes
too. I did. Yeah, I hit 2 in the first half. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so that game was rolling too. There you go. Yeah, get 2 claps from Matt Randazzo. There you go.
It doesn't. I don't remember my kids' birthdays most of the time, but I remember Nicholas Baer knocking down a couple big threes. So that's always a plus.
You know what people don't tell you about court storms? You know what no one tells you? They smell awful. They smell horrific.
I bet.
Everyone. I mean, like it's just no one tells you that. You just expect to be this like glow moment, and it's like, man, this was obviously awesome being surrounded by a bunch of fans and everybody losing their minds, but it's also just not a great smell. So fair warning for anybody, future court storms, which I hope there's many here at Carver Hawkeye Arena. Fair warning that way.
What people are going to take out of the last couple questions is what Carver Hawkeye used to be like and where it needs to get back to. And we've talked a little bit about that. Maybe we'll talk more about that in the future as well. He's Nicholas Baer. Bear Cage, I appreciate it. We're doing too many of these after losses. So next time, let's do one after a victory. What do you say?
Sounds like a plan to me. Thanks, man.
All right. He's Nicholas Baer, former Hawkeye, former Bettendorf standout here on Off the Air on a Wednesday. We got a lot more to get to. Don't you dare go away.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air on a Wednesday. Wednesday is hump day, but more importantly, it is Wildman Wednesday, and we're joined by a guy I tried to debate with and talk sports with for about 10 years of my life. I don't know if I did a very good job, Dan, but I feel like you prepared me. I feel like I win more debates nowadays because I had to deal with you back in the day. Thanks for doing this once again.
You did a good job.
Yeah.
You've obviously done a good job because you're doing it now.
Yeah, I'm still surviving, I guess, is the key. I don't know if anybody's watching, but I'm still surviving. I mentioned, we talked when we got on here before we started recording that your daughter's doing some wrestling, which I think is really cool. How big is girls wrestling? It's getting huge down or in our area, in Iowa and Illinois and the Quad Cities. What's it like in North Carolina?
Big, surprisingly. Like, she has a full squad, every weight, even some backups. Not everybody does. Kind of a joke. I don't know if I told you this, like last week, she won the conference, but she only had to wrestle one match, and it was one of her teammates who was her backup, who she pinned in challenges, and she pinned. But, she's gone to tournaments and, gone on with 5 and stuff. But it's the fastest growing sport, high school sport in America, I believe.
Yeah.
And it's the pickleball of high school sports, fastest growing sports. But, it's still kind of funny because she'll, go to a tough tournament and go 2-3, and then get 4 forfeits in a row and an exhibition. So it's inconsistent, but it's the 3 or 4. They think they finished 4th in the state. The top 10 teams are loaded. Girls real competitive, and then there's some schools that only run out one girl. So it's inconsistent, but it's cool. It's growing. Just from when my son wrestled as a freshman, there was one girl on the team, and she was on the boys' team. And now there's a full girls' team for the last couple of years. So in 3-4 years, it just blew up.
Dan, I'll tell you, when I first started doing what I did with you, I went out for a pace setter at Geneseo. And you're a wrestler and all that kind of stuff. You know what it's like. And I didn't. I wasn't in wrestling rooms. And I remember coming back, and you laughed at me a lot, and for this reason, for a good reason. But I came back from Geneseo, and I was in their wrestling room for a pace setter for like 45, 50 minutes, and I was dripping nasty sweat. I've never seen athletes train harder than wrestling. And you mentioned your daughter doing other sports. That's got to help these young ladies when it comes to other sports they want to do.
That's why she went out, because she's really into lacrosse. She was into basketball, from junior high up until freshman year even. And she's a junior, goes out for wrestling. But she did it because she knew it was good conditioning, and she's into lacrosse now. So she specifically did it, goes out as a junior, never wrestled, to condition for lacrosse. And, it was a weird, we'd laugh that she's a conference champion. But it was just, it's kind of funny. But it's great conditioning. And I did wrestle in high school, and that's what I used to tell people. I remember arguing on hair. It wasn't even Dwyer Michaels. I think it was Matt and Homie. And the one guy was trying to say, golf's the hardest sport. And I'm like, no, there's no running. You don't have to play defense. You don't have to tackle anybody. There's really no conditioning. And, everybody confuses mastering a sport with being a hard sport. They're two different things. No, unless they get 18 holes in one, you're not going to master golf. And you can talk about par and under par. Guy hitting a baseball is harder than hitting a golf ball. And we go through all this. And I said, one of those idiots said, well, like, anybody can go out and run. Anybody can run a marathon. And I said, you got to be kidding me. How hard it is to run a marathon. And I said, if you're talking about qualifying for Boston or you actually have to keep a pace. Yeah. What those Kenyans do is phenomenal. And he said, oh, nobody can run. And I said, then I brought up wrestling. And they're like, oh, you don't have to be a good athlete to be a wrestler. And I said, well, I'm going to put it this way. This is on behalf of all wrestlers out there. I said, people go out on a golf course every weekend, thousands, millions of people, and they suck. Mm-hmm. And they still go back because there's no fear factor. There's no fatigue factor. I said, I've seen guys walk out of a wrestling practice, not a meet, not at the end of the season, literally, and everybody's ever wrestled has seen this. I've seen guys walk out of a wrestling practice, not even finish, quit, and never come back. That, to me, that I don't remember a lot of guys even doing that in football. Quit in the middle of practice and never be heard from again. The guys have literally walked out of wrestling practices I've been in and gone, never come back. So that's how hard it is mentally, physically, conditioning wise.
Wrestling is tops of my list, but I'll tell you a quick story. I used to think swimming was easy, and I dated a girl at Augustana, and I equated like working out and working hard with like sweating. Like that was my thing. I'm that idiot nowadays that when I play basketball or work out, I wear sweats because I want to sweat. I feel like that's how I get a good workout. And so I remember saying to her like, oh, it's easy. And I went over to do one of her workouts, or just a little one. And it's one of the most demanding cardio workouts I've ever had in my life. Swimming is just right there as legit as anything else.
Swimming is, and you got the drowning factor too. The dying factor comes into play. Even though you're, in a pool and there's lifeguard. Think about swimming like the long distance runners is just conditioning. I mean, at least wrestling, you're pinning guys, and it's kind of like, because I box too, wrestling and boxing, there was, some people look at me like I'm nuts, but there was a fun factor of beating each other up and getting after it. Swimming, once again, it's just an individual thing. It's like running. And it's all conditioning. That's how I always looked at it. And I was terrible too. Like the bad life-saving class that I had with Jim Fox at St. Ambrose. I hated that. So people are really good swimmers. I'm with you on that, the conditioning. And the funny thing is you get older, me being 60 at the Y the other day, the guys my age who are in the best shape probably are the swimmers, because they don't have the beat down of us lifters and, you know, the runners. They don't have the bad knees. They don't have the shot elbows from lifting, that they're still pretty lean and don't have as much, you know, they have some shoulder injuries, but nothing like the injuries we get. So, yeah, hats off to the swimmers, because it's mentally another one, like you said, just conditioning, mentally tough, getting in there and doing it. And with aging, some of the best of people that you see in shape are the aging swimmers that are still getting after it.
None of these are things I had to talk about, but you mentioned pickleball. I'm that guy now. Like, I used to equate it with old people at PepsiCo or whatever. And my wife and a couple of my kids picked it up this summer, and then we all started doing it. And, Tim Baldridge was in last week, a tennis guy. And I asked him, like, do you get cranky with pickleball? Because it's like knockoff tennis. You kind of chuckled about pickleball.
There's a battle.
Do you like pickleball? Do you play pickleball? Thoughts on pickleball with you?
My daughter played it this weekend with some of her friends. She likes it. I think it's great. Anybody who's in any activity. Like, that's the one thing about golf. I always say the golfers kind of miss the ideas. You're outside, you're walking. Even if you're on a cart, you're still doing some walking. You're going up and down different terrain, hills. Mm-hmm. You know, it's good for overall health being outside. They miss the boat, because the guys who only golf are like, it's a great sport, and they want to pretend they're still athletes. It's like, no, it's a great hobby. Yes. It's a great, getting out hiking, getting out walking, gardening, fishing. There's a lot of things just being outside that are great. I think pickleball is great for that. What I find amusing, which I do almost every subject in life, is the tennis players who have grown to love pickleball and the tennis players who hate pickleball. You got the other side who doesn't want to admit, like, they're stealing our courts and they hate it. And then you got the other guys go, oh, it's so great, because some people, you know, it's a shorter court. You know, you don't need as many fast twitch muscles or, you know, pounding on the surface. So I laugh at hearing former tennis players who either, I still play tennis and I hate pickleball, or vice versa. It's kind of like you mentioned John Marks always busting on me. Marksy was that way with softball. He was a baseball guy, and he couldn't believe me and all of our other friends were playing softball. And then we got him out there playing a little bit, and he started realizing, hey, this could be pretty fun too.
Yeah, no, it's funny.
But with you being Italian, soon you'll be talking about bocce ball, right?
Hey, anything you can do with a beer in your hand, I'm usually for. That's right. The thing with golf, bowling. It's like, you can't take golf that seriously, bowling? Because I'm usually drunk by the turn, especially when anger drags me out there.
Well, bowling but it's funny, as a kid, you laughed at bowling, or maybe high school, junior high. That's not a sport. And then I tell my patients now, you're standing on one leg. You're getting shoulder range of motion. You're holding, even if you got a light ball, you're holding some weight, and it is good balance and bending down with the knee bend. So I put bowling up there, and there was another one you mentioned. I forgot. I was thinking the same thing, that they're all good. Not only can you do it, horseshoes is the other one you didn't mention, but I tell people the same thing. Stuff you didn't like when you're at Ambrose and you're playing with your buddies. You said drinking, playing horseshoes or something. But then you start realizing, not only am I bending down to throw it and using a little weight in my arm, but I have to bend down to pick up the horseshoes. Something that you didn't even think of, but as you get older, you go, that's good.
Yeah, that's a plus.
Good exercise. It's good movement.
We're here with Dan Burich, and we're 10 minutes in, and I had none of this planned, which is fantastic. Sean Taylor became the Western Big Six all-time winning coach last week, surpassing Duncan Reed. And it just, because last week we talked about the Quad City Sports Hall of Fame, or not Hall of Fame, but Mount Rushmore. It had me thinking Western Big Six boys basketball coaching Mount Rushmore. I got mine that I kind of thought about a little bit. Who stands out to you when you think coaching basketball Western Big Six? What are those names right off the top of your head?
All right. This is before, I didn't get to Ambrose till 82, but being at Joliet Catholic, we had Lockport in our conference, and Lockport won the state in 77, 78. I'm trying to remember what year, when I was, I think 78 maybe. And UT was down there. It might have been, UT had some really good teams, and the coach was Talley.
Yep.
So it comes to mind for United Township. And after that, my buddy Mike Gillespie was there. Scotty Olson was there, another guy who went to St. Francis Joliet. So I knew those guys. But I'd say you have to say Tally for UT. You're an Allman guy, so I know you put Don Morris on it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless Larry guilted you for cutting you when you were a sophomore and you had to, feel guilty and give Larry
Dan, I
guilty.
had knee
Larry
surgery. It was knee surgery that cost me.
But I think Don Morris will be up there. For Rocky, I guess you got to go for when Duncan, when I was in the Quad Cities, Duncan was 20 wins every year. And if it weren't for some unbelievable Peoria teams, he never lost to a bad team. He was down there with
those
some
Chicago Farragut
St.
teams.
Louis was down there.
Chicago Farragut. It was Ronnie Fields and Kevin Garnett.
Right.
Chicago Farragut, I think.
But they didn't even make it. They didn't even make it. It was the kid from Thornton. Like Antoine Randall was on the team. Melvin Ellie or Eli or something like that. The one year St. Francis de Sales had Eric Anderson, went to Indiana. East St. Louis had the kid who went to Notre Dame, who does broadcasting now, and I'm drawing a blank on his name.
I know who you're talking about.
I have
LaFonso Ellis?
winners in my head, but that's not it.
Was it LaFonso Ellis?
Right.
Yeah.
So there, he lost to some unbelievable teams. So I put Duncan on it, Don Morris, Tally. I know Frank Dexter had a good run at Moline. I guess you got to go with Taylor now. You know what? Galesburg had a guy, John Thiel. I know the gym is named like Don Morris. And I didn't know him, but I remember like Cornelis and Albrecht and all the older guys who played. Not only were Tom and Jim, and they're Allman guys, not only are they sportscasters, but they were basketball players too. So they used to speak a lot of Coach Thiel. The guy down at, do you count, not Galesburg, do you count, I guess it's Western Big Six.
Yeah.
The guy down at Quincy, Leggett, right?
Yep.
I guess he'd be up there too.
Yeah. Do you put Tom Sigel in the mix?
Didn't I bring him up last week? I said he won state, and I just talked about Duncan. It was only 2 classes back then.
Yeah, it's different.
But he won state at Rock Falls, and he won state at Rocky. You're just saying just Western Big Six.
Yeah.
But overall, he's definitely overall you put him up there. Now you start nitpicking, and I'm not. You went to Allman, so I didn't go to UT, I didn't go to Moline, I didn't go to Rocky. So I guess you guys there's better, I guess, people who have known it from the 60s to now.
Yeah.
Where I just knew it from basically, say late 70s to early 2000s.
And that's when I do like my era. I'm more biased towards Sean Taylor. I'm more biased towards Tom Sigel because I covered them, and I don't remember the Thiels and the Leggetts and those type of guys.
Yeah,
and I think it was different.
Too.
Yeah, it was just different.
Like I said, they both won state, which helps.
Yeah. When it comes to did you ever do the Big Six coaching banquets, or was that always TC that emceed those? I do them now.
Well, it was Tom a lot, but I did it one year. I actually have a plaque somewhere back here, I'm sure. Yeah, I did it one year.
Those were fun back in the day.
It was almost uncomfortable. We talked about Duncan Reed stories last time. It was almost uncomfortable, but I liked it because Duncan got up and called out. Leggett wasn't there. The Quincy, they would send the assistant who was Hispanic, and I can't remember his name now. And Duncan called him right out for Quincy recruit. You remember they always had to have a 6'8" kid from Puerto Rico or something to come up. I forget where from. And Duncan called him right out on it. And it was, I guess in the 90s, say 97 or something.
Yeah.
It was amusing, uncomfortable, all in one.
Well, it became and it still is like a roast. We try to make fun of each other, but as the time goes by, the guys get nicer, and they're probably watching this now, some of them, and they're just too nice of guys. You were probably in the age of Duncan, and Sean Taylor's hilarious, and he still does a great job. But Duncan and Leggett's and Dexter's and those guys.
Frank Dexter Frank Dexter was pretty witty. He had a dry sense of humor. And Larry, Schulte was pretty funny. And I can't remember who was at UT at the time. If Scott was gone, it was trying to remember.
It wasn't Yount.
The old Augie guy might have been. You might have been right.
Yount.
But it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah.
I say the old Augie guy, but yeah.
Those are always interesting. They're fun still today, and Sean steals the I feel bad sometimes because I make more fun of them than they do. And they get up and they make fun of my ears, which is lazy. It's lazy. Anybody can get up there and make fun of my ears. Yeah.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, just try.
Well, it's kind of just like in the MAC, the other side with the football coaches. Certain guys like, hey, Frank Dexter was kind of cerebral witty, and like some people would get it. That's how like Mark Kazmarek to me with Assumption would say some funny stuff, and half the people wouldn't get it. Like Kaz was a little wiry, so it's always kind of funny, interesting to observe. Everybody's, some guys have a dry wit. Some guys take the low hanging fruit. Some people are, more smart aleck to their friends and won't even acknowledge. It's just always interesting to observe them in a different setting.
There was one year, Todd DePorter, and Alleman was still good back then. They've had some struggles lately. Don't have a varsity team right now, but they went 2-7. And I think I just said, Todd, if I have twice as many kids as Alleman has victories, that's not acceptable. Like, it's just, and everyone thought that was too mean to say. I'm like, what? It is what it is. It's softened, Dan, just like society. It's softened very much since back in the day when you got to do it as well. There's a football game coming up this weekend.
Similar when North Scott football back in the day never had a winning season, and look how good they are now. And I said, you've never had a winning season? And I kind of was laughing, and they weren't happy about it. Well, we're a little school playing the Bettendorfs and Assumption, and I'm like, okay, relax. I just thought maybe once you could go 5-4, but now it's great because look at how they've turned it around.
Do you know Assumption football's never been to the Unidome?
Yeah, because they always got beat by Bettendorf.
Yeah, because. So it's the Jake Gervais who just had a good stint in the NFL 4 or 5 years, and they made
Sammy Spit, as I always say.
Yeah, they made T-shirts for a three-peat because when he was at Assumption, they beat Bettendorf 3 times, and that pisses anger off. Well, he wasn't there, but Pat's the first person to remind him, like, hey, if you need directions to the Unidome, let me know because I can give you guys. Assumption's never been there.
It's funny though because there was a couple. When Tavian was at Bettendorf and Eddie Gibson was at Assumption.
Oh, yeah.
Assumption had some really good teams, and their only loss would be to Bettendorf.
Yep.
And I think you could make an argument that Assumption was the second best team in the state, maybe 2 out of 3 years in a row. They just couldn't beat Bettendorf.
Yeah.
And then there was a couple years where they'd finally beat them after Tavian was gone and after Eddie was gone, but like not Matt Ford. Well, Forbes is a good player. I'm trying to think. Tony Collins. There were 2 Collins brothers.
Yep.
The one who went to Iowa. Punt returner. Was it Tony?
Yep. Tony. Yep.
Yeah, Tony, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I think Assumption would win in the regular season, and then Bettendorf would beat them in the playoffs. And I always, not most of the time you don't care. You really don't. I know you went to Alleman, but I hate to admit to Quad City people because I did cable games and TV and radio. I really never cared when it was Moline, Rock Island, Bettendorf, Assumption. Who won? For the most part, I didn't. I just wanted a good game. And I know, Assumption parents who went to Ambrose with me are upset about that. But I had Bettendorf friends too. But I did kind of feel bad when it got lopsided. And I did feel kind of bad for Assumption. Like, you can't get over that hump.
Just once. Just one time.
I didn't really take a side, but I was like, oh, come on, dude. You got to beat them one of these years. But, Bettendorf and Pat's right. Bettendorf kind of had their number.
It's funny because one thing you told me, I just told this somebody the other day, that there'll be times there'll be times that you'll root against Iowa and you'll root for Illinois because of this job. And I said, Danny, you're crazy. I'm not going to root against Iowa or root for Illinois, but there'd be times that I'd have my highlights cut and I was ready to go. And then Iowa would come back and change it. I'm like, I got to change things. I think the most I ever was emotionally invested in the high school team wasn't Alleman. Maybe some of their baseball teams I got into pretty good, but it was Chase and Randall and Rock Island when they were down there playing for a state championship. And Chasen really liked the guy, still friends with them to this day, and Tom Sigel's a class act, but it was also they were going to come on the Sunday show if they won. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking state championship for the first time in school history is a lot cooler of a story than state runner-up. So it's kind of funny how you think those ways. I always rooted for a team as long as they took me, but don't take me really far and make me work and then lose. Like, if you're going to take me that far, win the whole thing and win a state championship.
I felt that way with, now the Western Big Six, actually, since we're talking about it, I think their best sport for about a decade was girls softball. And you had Moline, you had Alleman, and UT.
Yeah.
I think Moline won state a couple times, Alleman won state a couple times, and UT was knocking at the door. I can't remember if they won, but every time you'd go down, whoever went, you'd root for them.
Yeah.
You're like, we're down here, let's go. And that was pretty fun. And
was that the Corey Clears?
Did the same thing on the Iowa side.
Was that the Corey Clear and the Peñas? What is it for the pitchers for Alleman? Was that Corey Clear? Was that era?
That was one of them. But I mean, they were even good. You know what? Have Jay Hatch on. He'll remember. Yeah. I mean, he had more than one great team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fernando Peña or something like that was really good too. Yeah, they had a bunch of. It's funny because when I started covering this stuff, softball games were 1-0. If you missed the run, you were screwed. But they moved the mound back.
Don't you remember? You'd get there like it was me and Dan Pearson. We'd get there and go,
it's the worst.
1-0. We missed it.
Yeah, it was like a hockey game or a soccer game. I remember one time I was out in Geneseo and it was going 20-some innings, and I ran out of battery. And that's the first. I looked at Pearson. I'm like, I'm screwed. I ran out of battery, and he goes, "Here's my keys. Go out to my car and grab a battery."
Did he loan you one? That's awesome.
And he's like, I go, "Can you do that?"
That's
and he
great
goes,
Pearson
"Yeah,
story.
I can do that." And so, and it was like the 20th inning when somebody scored. Yeah, we've talked about a lot without talking about anything, but there is a Super Bowl coming up. Are you we'll talk about the game in a second. Do you care about the commercials? I can kind of remember back in the day, but back in the day, didn't you run some of them on Monday in your sportscast as like these were the best commercials, or no?
I think that's when Budweiser was sponsoring me on radio, so I was obliged. No, I'm just kidding. I think I ran them and made fun of like Matt Hamill and people who got excited about him. And I'm not picking on Hamill, just that he was the anchor.
No, that's okay. You can pick on him. I'm good.
Or somebody. Yeah, I always thought there was a time where there were a couple amusing ones, like a Doritos or a Budweiser. But I don't care about.
Are you a halftime show guy?
I don't care about the commercials. You know who Bill Baer is?
Yeah.
The comedian?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I didn't hear you say yeah. He did the whole thing on an interview the other day, and I could have stolen it. He said, I don't go to Super Bowl parties because I like to watch the game, and then most people at Super Bowl parties talk during the plays and then watch the commercials and the halftime show, and that's kind of how I feel about it.
Do you care about the halftime show? I don't even know who it is. Who is it this year?
I don't even know who it is. No.
Kendrick Lamar. Nah, I'm not a big fan. Okay, so let's talk football. Let's talk about the actual game.
The Bulls 1 year?
What's that?
The game I want Philadelphia to win for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
I was talking with one of my clients was an old time scout, and he still goes to Steelers games. He knew Rocky Blyer in Vietnam War. It's a neat old guy anyway, Steve. And then we were talking about this. If Kansas City wins, they will claim we're the greatest dynasty ever. But the Steelers, who won those 4 Super Bowls in 6 years and were injured one of the years, a great Oakland team beat them finally. So they went 3 in a row. Oakland wins. Dallas wins it over the Orange Crush, and Dallas was a team that they beat twice. They beat a great Dallas team. So they beat a great Vikings, Rams, and Dallas twice in the Super Bowl. In between, a great Raiders team finally got over the hump and beat them. And before that, Miami was great with the undefeated team, and they won back-to-back Super Bowls. But that year, you figure Pittsburgh won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years and had some injuries. And also, I hate to admit it as a Bears fan, the Packers won 5 titles in a row, I think. 2 of them were Super Bowls.
Yeah.
So when they go, this will be the first team to ever three-peat. Not really. Three-peat in the Super Bowl. And so I don't want Kansas City to win for that factor because I don't think they're as good as those teams. Andy Reid, I think, is a great coach. Mahomes is obviously great. Jones is great on defense. I hate to admit it, Kelsey is a great tight end. After that, their defense has improved. You don't look at them and see Jack Lambert, Mean Joe Green, Jack Ham, Bradshaw, Swan, Stallworth. You don't see like those Steelers teams. And you don't even see like the Packers teams who had a ton of Hall of Famers. We talk the Jerry Kramers and the Forrest Greggs and the Jim Taylors and the Bart Starr. And on defense, I didn't even get started with the Nitschkes and Davis. And so to me, I don't look at them and see the depth and the dominance that those other teams have, or even the Dolphins team I mentioned. So I don't want them to win as a kind of a football historian, a guy who loves football. It's not going to, I don't live or die over it. Plus, I like the fact that Philadelphia is back, and they're better than they were 2 years ago when they played them because they picked up Barkley. Yeah. And I like Barkley, and I like the running game. So on paper, you say better running game, better defense. I'm picking Philly. And I picked Philly. I thought it was going to be Philly-Baltimore to start. That was where my money is. My heart wanted your Lions and Buffalo. Yeah. But in my cynicism, said Kansas City. I think we talked about that a couple weeks ago. But I just think Philadelphia with their defense, look how they've been dominating the playoffs with defense, the running game. And I know if it's close, you think Mahomes is going to pull it out. But one of these times he's going to choke. Yeah. Not necessarily choke, but he's not going to get it done.
Give me a final score just so we can kind of hold you to it. And
I think, to me, if Philadelphia wins, they're going to pull away from them a little bit.
Okay.
Because they're stronger, and maybe Mahomes finally does throw a pick, and it maybe goes the other way. So I would say something like, you figure 31-24, 28-24. Most people are going to say 3 or 4 points, but I think if Philadelphia wins, they could pull away and get, an extra field goal here, an extra interception, fumble return for a touchdown. So let's even go bolder, like a 33-24 type of score.
I like it. What I'm going to do one of these weeks, we're going to do it earlier. We do this on Tuesday nights, so if you're watching this, it's taped. It's okay. I'm going to have Glenn cooking, and I'm going to walk away. And Glenn is like you did to me back in the day, and you left me with Glenn. I'm just going to leave you. I'm being serious. I'm going to leave you with Glenn and let you guys do the magic that you used to do back on radio. Go ahead.
All right. 2 things though. First, you told me you're going to have Marks on.
Yeah, I got to have him on eventually.
Have Glenn on.
Yes. We're going to have everybody on.
Make up your mind. Who's
yes. Well, what are those old senile guys we're going to have on? No, actually, I shouldn't say that because Glenn is not old and senile. The other one, probably, but not Glenn. But not Glenn. So, anyways, Dan, I appreciate it. We're going to hold you to 33-24, and we'll talk to you again next week. Appreciate it.
Well, okay. What's your prediction now?
I hate to say this, Kansas City 27-24. And
see,
it's just
most people, we all go.
And I don't want it to happen, but I just think that somehow, some way, it comes down to quarterbacks for me and Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes. If I'm going to put my money on one of them, I got to put my money on one of them.
Hurts played them tough 2 years ago.
It's true. It's true. When's the last time they won a Super Bowl? Philly. It's been a minute,
Philadelphia?
Right? Yeah.
The Philly special where they beat New England.
But how long ago was that?
Nick Foles.
So it was 5 years ago?
6 years ago?
6 years
Nick
ago?
Foles,
Okay.
right?
Yeah,
6 years ago, I guess.
It annoys me because I know Philly fans. My brother-in-law, Lisa's husband Dave, is a big Philly fan, and he won a Super Bowl. And Dan, it comes down to if I can't be happy, I don't want anybody else to be happy. And so I don't know any.
Would you rather your brother-in-law be? Would you rather your brother-in-law be happy than Chiefs fans who have been happy for how many years now?
You would think that, but I don't really know too many personal or Chiefs fans personally. So and you know what? I hope they don't win. I'll probably be rooting for Philadelphia, but my money's going to be with the better quarterback, unfortunately. And that's Patrick Mahomes. And hopefully I'm wrong. The one, I'll tell you this story. I may have told you last week too, but, my wife for the last 15 years has bet on the coin toss. And she's won one time in 15 years, Dan. That's impossible. That's impossible.
I was expecting you to say she's won like 15 years.
No, I have Ben Hammer. Ben Hammer used to be the Rock Island head coach. He'll text me and be like, "Hey, did your wife decide because they're fading her. They're doing the opposite of what Jen does just to win some money." So I'll have a bunch of dumb, stupid bets on the game because that's what entertains me more than anything else. But and I won't care about the halftime show either. So it'll be a good day, a good Sunday.
You can bet on the length of the national anthem,
the color of the Gatorade.
Yeah, right.
Anything.
Color Gatorade.
Right. I'm sure there's like Taylor Swift prop bets too, which I refuse to do, but maybe one of my nieces will want to do or something like that. So yeah, roll your eyes. Yeah. I completely agree. So anyways, we will find out what happens at the Super Bowl, and we'll talk to you again next week. Thanks, Dan.
All right.
I appreciate it. He is the Wild Man, Dan Burich. It's Wildman Wednesdays, and it's great because I had a whole list of things I might have talked to Dan about, and we we talked about good stuff anyways. So anyways, we will be right back. You're watching Off the Air on a Wednesday.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air on a Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. Wednesday, February 5th. It's been a fun hump day here on the show. Joining me live in studio is Bobby Metcalf. Bobby, a longtime sports writer in our area. Good friend of mine. Used to be a former sports writer. Now is a producer at WQAD. But came on in to talk all about the world of sports and big picture stuff with women's basketball and all that kind of stuff. So check out Bobby if you happen to miss the beginning of the show. Also, after that, we had Nicholas Baer. He broke down yet another Iowa loss. The Hawkeyes have now lost 5 of their last 6 games, and they need to do a lot of work. I think Nicholas said you got to think 7 of their next 9 to make the NCAA tournament, and the road and the schedule gets very, very tough. So the Hawkeyes have to regroup a little bit. We talked with the Bear Cage about atmospheres at Carver Hawkeye Arena as well. So check out the Bear Cage if you missed him. And then, of course, we just wrapped up Wildman Wednesdays with Dan Burich, and God knows what you're going to talk about with Dan Burich. Always fun to catch up with him. We do it each and every Wednesday here on the show. Of course, if nobody remembers Dan Burich, he was a sports director at WQAD for myself, longtime sports anchor in the area. Also started KJOC way back in the day. So that's what I did. I grew up listening to KJOC Sports Radio here in the Quad Cities, listening to Dan in the morning and I think Dan at night as well. Listened to a lot of Dan Burich, which was a lot of fun. And then, of course, worked with him. So always great to be joined by Dan as well. Tomorrow, we got a good show already taking shape. Lauren Walker from Central DeWitt became the Sabres all-time leading scorer last night. She's going to be on the show tomorrow to talk about her record-setting performance and the season that is for the DeWitt Sabres, which are really, really close to clinching a MAC title on the girls' side of things, a very talented MAC on the girls' side as well. So we're hoping to be joined by her. Also tomorrow, we're going to get you set for the Super Bowl with Dan Tomlin and our gambling segment. So make sure you get ready for that. Get your pens and paper out. See if we can make you some money over the Super Bowl weekend. Also, efforting Alex Taney. Not sure if we're going to be able to connect with him yet, but a couple more guests as well. So looking to pack the show up on Thursday and most likely not going to have a show on Friday. My wife is out of town and I've got a lot of kids' duties with my wife out of town. So as we're looking right now, probably no show. Probably no show on Friday. We'll let you know for sure tomorrow as well. That's the beauty part of all this. I didn't have to put my time off time card in or anything like that. If we got a lot to do with the family, we'll take a day off before the Super Bowl and then get ready to rock and roll again next Monday. So anyways, tomorrow, a jam-packed show, and if you've missed any of the shows this week, go check them out. We've had a lot of fun, a lot of great guests already this week. Logan Lee, caught up with him yesterday on the show, so check out Logan's segment. Pat Anger has been on as well. Jim Madsen, a bunch of great guests already this week as well, and looking for more as we get rolling throughout the days and weeks right here on Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. If you've not yet subscribed, what are you waiting for? Subscribe on YouTube. That helps me out a ton. Also, like, rate, review, comment, all those kind of things. And if you miss these shows on YouTube, you can check them out on all of the podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts as well. So make sure you're following on that as well, so they just download and go right to your folder each and every day, so you can catch up with all the local sports right here in the Quad Cities. That'll do it for a Wednesday edition of Off the Air. We will see you guys back here tomorrow. Have a great Wednesday.